What's the boogeyman?
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
It was the low-budget shocker that made a surprise box office killing. Without movie stars or special effects, it sliced its way to the top of Hollywood's record books.
Everybody was surprised by its success. And it didn't succeed right away.
Its making was the ultimate test for a group of struggling filmmakers who took a stab at creating a new chapter in screen horror.
We were a little army. We were a little army making a film. We were just a bunch of kids trying to make a movie.
But when they were doing the deed, the sexual deed, oh my God. Yes.
Everybody did everything.
Go get me a beer.
I thought you were gonna get me one.
It was that kind of a, you know, Mickey Rooney, let's make a movie.
Totally.
Anytime I'm channel surfing and I come across a scene from Halloween, you know, I just have to sit there and watch it again.
It's amazing how many fans, generation after generation after generation, who have come up to me and said, I loved it, I was so scared I couldn't sleep. People really embrace this picture.
Are you insane?
Halloween is the Gone with the Wind of the horror movies.
Please help me! Please!
I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this night, inhumanly patient, waiting for some secret, silent alarm to trigger him off. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it, or you can help me to stop it.
Released in 1978, the horror tale Halloween became a box office smash and a cultural phenomenon.
I saw the boogeyman.
With its simple but terrifying story of small-town babysitters stalked by a maniacal killer. Despite a budget of just $320,000, Halloween would go on to become the most profitable independently released film ever. Its worldwide success shocked not only Hollywood, but also the filmmakers behind it, who went on to become some of the industry's hottest talents.
Ronnie Emerson did a haunted house. He said awful stuff happened there once. Michael!
All the elements were right. An intriguing villain, a little bit of camp value with the Loomis character played by Donald Pleasance.
I'm his doctor. You must be ready for him. If you don't, it's your funeral.
You had some pretty teenagers in there.
We have 3 new cheers to learn in the morning. The game is in the afternoon. I have to get my hair done at 5, and the dance is at 8.
All the stars were in alignment.
Totally.
Everybody was very young. We were shooting in an incredibly fast pace. The entire makeup, wardrobe, prop department was in a tiny Winnebago. Here I was with these 18, 19, 20, 22-year-old guys, primarily, and a lot of people's girlfriends and friends and family all creating this movie.
Well, kiddo, I thought you outgrew superstition.
We were kids back then in '78. People were giving us some money. We were going out and playing. We had a huge sandbox to play in. We had our friends with us. We had no idea what we had.
Here's something that a movie which didn't cost that much money, which is constantly continues to sell. I don't think there's another film like it.
Although Halloween was created by a team of movie-making hopefuls, its eerie premise was the idea of a veteran Hollywood player studio executive turned independent film distributor Irwin Yablans.
I want to do a horror film. So I started to think about how to do this for the limited amount of money we had. And it occurred to me that if we did a movie about babysitters, it would work because everybody had either been a babysitter or been a baby. And also I thought it would be something that would lend itself to kids in jeopardy. One night would be the best way to do it. Halloween just popped into my mind.
Trick or treat! Trick or treat!
And I thought to myself, gee, wouldn't that be great? But I'll bet somebody's done it, you know. The title's been used. Someone's made a picture called Halloween. And then the magical thing that I learned, the word Halloween, and as much as we could research, not only had not been used, but even the word had not been used as part of another title in the history of the movie business. Now that's an interesting thing.
Yablans' enthusiasm was shared by his pick for director. He turned to a 29-year-old USC graduate who'd recently helmed one of Yablans' most intriguing action films. His name was John Carpenter.
I had made a low-budget movie called Assault on Precinct 13. It had gotten some critical response in Europe.
It's terror in the night. It's the most shattering assault on a police station in history.
This is the siege. It's a goddamn siege.
Assault on Precinct 13.
Irwin said, let's make a horror film about babysitters who are stalked by this psychotic killer.
And John got really excited. I met with him the next day at the Hamburger Hamlet. We had a tuna fish sandwich together. And I explained it to him.
He suggested we put it on Halloween night, play the whole thing on Halloween night, and call the movie Halloween, because he felt it was a holiday that everybody could identify with, and it hadn't really been done. And since I needed a job and I wanted to do that kind of thing, I said, sure, I'll do it, and as long as I can have complete creative control and I get my name above the title, then we'll do it.
He said, I can do this for $300,000. I said, for $300,000, if you can do that, you can have Final Cut, you can have it above the title. I mean, you can have anything you want. He said he would do it in 4 weeks. He would do the music, and for that, he received the princely sum of $10,000, which, by the way, was a lot of money for John at that time, and 10% of profit, which I'm sure he believed that he would never see a dollar of. Now I got to find the $300,000, but I agreed at the spot. I knew I would find that money somehow. We were in business with a man named Mustafa Akkad, and he invested some money in our company, but he was, quite frankly, uninterested.
I was shooting an epic, big historic epic, Line of the Desert, with Anthony Quinn and Irene Papas and Rod Steiger in Morocco and Rome. And here I get a message that John Carpenter wants to meet me. So I was in London. John Carpenter came to London with Irwin Yablans, and I said, this is the idea. How much? They said $300,000. I said, $300,000? I mean, when it's expensive, you get worried. And when it is so cheap, you get worried. How can they make a movie for $300,000?
I kept backing John up and telling Mustafa that this picture, from a commercial point of view, could be a very successful little movie, and we would do very well. And then I really hit him with the zinger. I said to John, but you know, John, $300,000 is a lot of money, and maybe it's just more than Mustafa can handle. I think that it was calculated because I knew Mustafa was a very proud man. Oh, what do you mean? No. And with that, and then he agreed to the $300,000 right there, and that was it.
Galvanized by the promise of total creative freedom, John Carpenter now eagerly set out to make a film that would be his industry calling card. To co-write and produce, he turned to a trusted past collaborator, Deborah Hill, his script supervisor on Assault on Precinct 13.
It took us about 3 weeks to write the script. We placed it in Haddonfield, Illinois, because I'm from Haddonfield, New Jersey. So I really had a sense of what a small town was like.
You're not supposed to go up there.
Yes, I am.
That's a small town.
Could be any place in the Midwest. Most small towns have a kind of haunted house story of one kind or another. At least that's what teenagers believe. There's always a house down the lane that somebody was killed in or somebody went crazy in.
Does anybody live here?
Well, not since 1963 when it happened. Every kid in Haddonfield thinks this place is haunted.
They may be right.
Lonnie Elam said never to go out there. Lonnie Elam said it's a haunted house.
Lonnie Elam probably won't get out of the 6th grade.
I was a babysitter, and I knew what it was like to be, you know, all those characters. And so I really contributed the girl dialogue.
I thought you were babysitting tonight.
The only reason she babysits is to have a place
Shit.
I have a place for that.
I forgot my chemistry book.
So who cares? I always forget my chemistry book and my math book and my English book and my, let's see, my French book. And, well, who needs books anyway? I don't need books. I always forget all of my books. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you have your books or not. Hey, isn't that Devon Graham?
I don't think so.
I think he's cute.
Hey, jerk! Speed kills! Yeah, can't you take a joke?
John really is, I would say, the developer of the whole evil concept. He gave Michael Myers that sense of foreboding.
Oh, look.
Look where?
Behind the bush.
I don't see anything.
The guy who drove by so fast, that one you yelled at.
Oh, subtle, isn't he?
Halloween is loaded with scares, suspense scares. Hopefully not grisly or gory, but suspenseful, making people on the edge of their seats. I enjoy doing that.
Creep. Lori, dear. He wants to talk to you. He wants to take you out tonight.
He was standing right there.
Poor Lori. Scared another one away.
Halloween was really influenced by the films of Alfred Hitchcock.
They're coming! They're coming!
And the kinds of films that John and I loved when we grew up.
Psycho was the granddaddy of these kind of movies. That's the first modern horror film. Took horror out of Gothic castles and European romanticism, vampires and werewolves, and brought it into kind of modern day problems and so forth. It was a terrifying movie. That was the signpost that everybody followed.
To play Halloween's good girl heroine Laurie Strode, Carpenter already had an actress in mind, a rising newcomer named Annie Lockhart.
I thought she was a great actress, and she turned us down. So Deborah came up with Jamie Lee. Jamie Lee was a contract player at Universal.
Jamie Lee Curtis was the perfect Laurie Strode. She had vulnerable qualities, and she was just wonderful in her audition.
Excuse me,
Oh,
Laurie.
Mr. Brackett, I'm sorry, Mr. Brackett.
Oh, I didn't mean to startle you.
Oh, it's all right.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Yes, sir. Nice seeing you, sir.
She had just done Operation Petticoat, which was a television series. So she was very, very green. She was very, very fresh. And yet she was the product of these unique parents, Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis. And besides being the best actress for the role, as a producer, I saw a great opportunity to promote the fact that she was the product of this Hollywood marriage.
When Jamie Lee Curtis came to mind, one thing popped in my mind. Janet Leigh in Psycho. So we hired Jamie Lee for that reason, who incidentally would have been best choice anyway. She turned out to be a fine actress.
The old Girl Scout comes through again.
I was a young actor, and all I kept seeing was my name, the character's name on every page. So I knew it was a big part, and I knew that there were other parts that they were casting, other women, other girls. And I was very much a smart aleck and was a cheerleader in high school, so felt very concerned that I was being considered for the really quiet, repressed young woman, when in fact I was very much more like the other two girls.
Hello?
Why'd you hang up on me?
Annie? Was that you?
Of course.
Why didn't you say anything? You scared me to death.
I had my mouth full. Couldn't you hear me?
Thought it was an obscene phone call.
Now you hear obscene chewing. You're losing it, Lori.
I already lost it.
I doubt that. Listen, my mother's letting me use her car. I'll pick you up. 6:30.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
She added something beyond herself. Jamie, as I'm saying, was a very savvy, grew up with Hollywood parents. She wasn't that little teenager that she played. That was her acting ability, and she was very, very good.
I'm babysitting the Doyles. It's only 3 houses down. We can keep each other company.
Oh, terrific. I've got 3 choices. Watch the kids sleep, listen to Linda screw around, or talk to you.
Cast as Laurie's girlfriends were Nancy Loomis, the real-life wife of Halloween's production designer Tommy Lee Wallace.
I plan on making popcorn and watching Dr. Dementia. 6 straight hours of horror movies. Little Lindsay Wallace won't know what hit her.
And P.J. Souls, who played a similar bad girl role in the 1976 horror hit Carrie.
Okay, so we're gonna, first we go inside, right? Then we'll just talk a little, and then Annie will distract Lindsay. That's when we go upstairs to the first bedroom on the left. You got it?
Okay, first I rip your clothes off.
So don't rip my blouse. It's expensive, idiot.
Then you rip my clothes off. Then we rip Lindsay's clothes off. Yeah, I think I got it.
Totally.
Like a million other actresses, I auditioned. And it was only afterwards that I found out that John Carpenter actually had written the part for me and hoping that he would be able to use me in it because he had seen Carrie.
Want a beer?
Yeah.
Is that all you can say?
Yeah.
Go get me a beer.
I thought you were going to get me one.
Yeah.
I was married to Dennis Quaid at the time, and I know that they had asked to see if he was available, but I think he was doing the movie of the week, which was kind of a bummer because it would have been fun to have him. We brought a lot of ourselves and our own ideas to the characters.
All right, come on. Where's my beer?
I think every line I ever said, I ended it with totally or started it with totally.
Totally. Totally. Totally. Totally. Totally. Totally. Totally.
But among their cast of fresh faces, Carpenter and Hill were desperate to cast a recognized name in the small but pivotal role of Michael Myers' pursuer, Dr. Sam Loomis. With $20,000 in the budget, the filmmakers made an offer.
My first choice was Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing was a famous British actor. I just loved him since I was a kid. This was in 1978. In 77, Peter Cushing was in Star Wars. So we called his agent and made an offer, and he would never deem to be in your little low-budget film.
Christopher Lee also declined to do the role. And it was funny, years later, we ran into Christopher Lee at a party, and he said, that is the biggest mistake I ever made of my career, is to not be in this movie.
It was I who said, have you ever seen Donald Pleasance? And I remember Donald Pleasance playing a bit of a loony in a picture called Will Penny, and a few others, as a matter of fact. And I knew he was a versatile actor. I didn't think we could get him, but I said, wouldn't he give us a touch of class?
I was a huge fan of Donald. Have been, again, since I was a kid.
So we hired Donald Pleasance, and we gave him an additional $20,000. So the total on the film was $320,000.
Pardon me, I'm Loomis, Dr. Sam Loomis.
Lee Brackett.
I'd like to have a word with you if I could.
Well, maybe a few minutes. I've got to take
It is important.
10 minutes.
I'll be here.
Donald accepted the part. My most frightening moment as a director was the first time I had to go meet Donald. Years later, I became very close with Donald. He became a very dear, dear, dear friend. But at the time, I was scared to death of him. So he said, I don't know why I'm doing this film. I don't know what my character is all about. The only reason I'm here is because my daughter, who's a rock and roll guitar player, thought that the music you did in Assault on Precinct 13 was good, so I don't know what I'm doing.
There are parts of the script which I'm now doing for John, which I can't accept. But I have to bring myself round to seeing it in his way because it's his film.
I realized that he was just testing me.
I think it's a little melodramatic, and certainly in my role.
He got hungry.
Could have been a skunk.
Could have.
Man wouldn't do that.
This isn't a man.
But of course it's not intended to be real in the that awful word, realistic sense.
He always wanted to test the director to see, what did you have in mind for him? Did you have passion for the role? What was going on? But, oh, my heart was pounding. It was awful. It was awful.
But greater frights lay just ahead. As the first day of filming now approached, and John Carpenter set out to risk everything on the most ambitious film of his career.
Stop here.
Shouldn't we go on up to the hospital and...
Wait.
In May of 1978, cameras rolled on day one of Halloween as John Carpenter and his eager young collaborators set out to conjure movie magic from a skeletal budget.
We shot a 20-day schedule, 4 weeks. Everybody did everything. It's harder to ask a stranger for a favor or to work for free or to work for very little money. So we really asked our friends to help us make this picture.
A lot of people who worked on the film worked free. They didn't have the money to do it, but it was making a film on love. You know, they loved to work.
You forgot about sleep for a couple of months. You just went and made the movie, and that was your life, and you ate it, drank it, slept it.
He's gone from here. The evil is gone.
Everybody was doing 10 jobs. It wasn't surprising to see Jamie grabbing a case and helping us carry stuff. She was really part of the crew.
I always said you'd make a fabulous Girl Scout. Thanks.
The actors didn't get paid very much, which is okay, though. They got scale, and that was important. I think it's the energy that everybody exuded, because we were all young, working actors, you know, just people beginning, and they all brought that enthusiasm in. Hi, Annie. Laurie.
Hi, Dad. What happened?
What?
What happened?
Oh, somebody broke into the hardware store, probably kids.
You blame everything on kids.
Well, now, all they took was some Halloween mask, rope, and a couple of knives. Who do you think it was?
It's hard growing up with a cynical father.
That was the best time I'd ever had on a film before or since. So we had a lot of fun on the set. There was a lot of jokes and kind of light. It was a light atmosphere. We had a great time.
It wasn't really so much a pressure because it's easier for me to get a scene in 1 or 2 takes. You do a little bit of rehearsal and then you give 150% and you try to get it in the first take.
Hey, let's look for a note.
Let's don't.
They had a dolly track, and I guess, you know, I had big high shoes on, so, and then we're going to go from the couch across the living room and up the stairs, and it was going to be one sweeping shot. And you know, you're always trying to look ahead and not look at the camera, look down to see where you're going, because, you know, you're trying to create this fake world here.
Lindsay is gone for the night.
Hey, now that's wonderful.
And I guess I tripped over the dolly track. And John kept it in because the rest of the shot worked, so thanks, John.
Even the movie's most veteran actor got into the Halloween spirit.
You must think me a very sinister doctor.
When Donald Pleasence came on set, it was just amazing. We only could afford to shoot him for a week. So we scheduled all of the scenes together, and, you know, it was a lot to accomplish.
But when they were doing the deed, the sexual deed...
Oh, my God.
Yes. Donald was unbelievable. He was so kind to us, but he never looked down on what we were doing. He gave every scene its respect. He gave everything that we were doing absolute 100% of him. He was amazing. I just couldn't believe it, how great he was. Not too bad. Feel better to have it happen in here and then you leave?
Well, I think she was sitting right here.
I do say
it's good to lie together because that gives him his force for rumination.
Exactly.
I think Donald was completely surprised when he arrived here from England that we were so young and we were such a small crew. There are behind-the-scenes shots, stills of him and I just chatting away.
Chicken. Go ahead, Lonnie. Go in.
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
He was just so enamored with everybody, and so he kind of joined in. He was like pulling cable too, and that was really great.
I'd like to have a word with you if I could.
Well, maybe a few minutes. I've got to take
It is important.
10 minutes.
I'll be here.
It was wonderful to work with him because he was kind of spooky. Those eyes, you know, moving around. You just look at him and go, ooh, what's going on in there?
Halloween's success would also rely not just on enthusiasm, but the effectiveness of its monstrous villain, Michael Myers.
How does Samuel's view of fate differ from that of Costain? Laurie?
Ma'am?
Answer the question.
Costain wrote that fate was somehow related only to religion, whereas Samuels felt that, well, fate was like a natural element, like earth, air, fire, and water.
That's right. Samuel's definitely personified fate. In Samuel's writing, fate is immovable, like a mountain.
Many of the names that they used, one comes to mind, Michael Myers, were little in-jokes that John and Deborah used from their own experiences.
Michael Myers was the distributor of Assault on Precinct 13 in England.
Michael Myers pushed it into the London Film Festival. That's where my reputation kind of began. So I felt I owed him. So that was my tribute to he was this dearest, dearest man.
He's cute.
I thought it might be a good idea to raise this Michael Myers character up to a mythic status. Make him human, yes, but almost like a force that will never stop, that can't be denied.
I told them how dangerous he was.
You couldn't have. 2 roadblocks and an all-points bulletin wouldn't stop a 5-year-old.
Well, he was your patient, Doctor. If precautions weren't strong enough, you should have told somebody.
I told everybody! Nobody listened.
There's nothing else I can do.
You can get back in there and get back on that telephone, tell him exactly who walked out of here last night, and tell him exactly where he's going.
Probably going.
I'm wasting my time.
Sam Haddonfield is 150 miles away from here. Now, for God's sakes, he can't drive a car.
He was doing very well last night. Maybe someone around here gave him lessons.
And I suppose I was influenced by a couple things. I remember Michael Crichton directed a movie called Westworld. Yul Brynner was a robot, a killer robot that couldn't be destroyed.
MGM presents Westworld.
We know you'll enjoy your stay in Westworld,
Hold it.
the ultimate resort,
Let me do it this time.
where nothing can possibly go wrong.
I'm shot.
Go wrong.
Raw.
Go wrong.
Oh, my God.
But when I was in college, I had a class, psychology or something, and we visited a mental institution, and this was in Kentucky. And I visited the most serious mentally ill patients. And there was this kid, I must have been 12 or 13, and he literally had this look that I gave the lines to Donald Pleasance to say.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
It's a schizophrenic stare, is what it is. It's a real evil stare. And it was unsettling to me. And it was like the creepiest thing I'd ever seen, just because as a stranger, it was completely insane.
Here's a guy who's a sociopath. He killed his sister when he was like 6 years old on Halloween night, dressed as a clown.
Michael's first act of evil would be shown in a sequence that required all of Carpenter's ingenuity and a stunning new camera only recently invented.
When I was making student films, I was in love with dolly shots. I was in love with Orson Welles' opening shot in Touch of Evil, which is a big, long crane shot. But physically, when you do dolly shot, it takes a long time. You have to lay down this track, and you put the camera on a dolly. You get these people to push it. And, you know, it takes time. We don't have the time on a low-budget film to make a lot of dolly shots. And then I discovered something called the Steadicam, or the Panaglide. That's a Panavision version. It's a gyroscopic camera that you attach to yourself, the camera operator, and walk around with it.
The Steadicam, it was a brand new device, and it allowed us to smoothly sort of move the camera wherever a guy could walk. And John said he wanted to use that as the opening shot. A sort of long, continuous shot that brought the audience into the backstory of what was going to be the movie. He wanted to start off establishing the old house, moving up to it as if it was somebody's point of view, but then move around the back, inside the house. Never one to, you know, shirk from a challenge like that. I immediately thought, well, this is going to be great fun.
John used the camera, as we know, as the character, Michael. So the camera becomes Michael, moving in.
We are alone, aren't we?
Michael's around someplace.
We look into the windows, we come around, and we come back around in the back door, and that's when I, posing as the young boy, get the knife, and I'm carrying the knife. Obviously, when you shoot with children, you're limited in terms of the time to shoot with the kids. It's a very, very complicated lighting setup, very complicated shot, and that was going to take up most of the time. So they needed somebody whose hands were small enough. So I became, you know, the kid. I'm carrying the knife. Those are my hands in the clown suit. That's me climbing upstairs with the camera behind me.
Michael!
And that's me killing the sister. I actually wasn't even touching her.
It was also a challenge because the shot took almost exactly one roll of film each time. So every time we did the shot, we would just barely get it done and the film would run out. Eventually, they decided they wanted to piece together, I think, 3 of the different takes. If you have a very sharp eye, you'll notice that as the camera moves up the stairs, looks down on the floor and sees the mask, and then places the mask in front of the lens, there's a cut. The second one is just as the camera runs from having killed the girl to the top of the stairs and swishes to look down. There's another cut that occurs there.
It took us a night to do the whole sequence. Michael? We had a crane for the evening. And we pull back from the little kid who's unmasked. We come back from the house up and see the neighborhood. That was an ambitious shot for a little low-budget crew.
Although set in the Midwest, Halloween was filmed entirely in Southern California.
Halloween has a couple of distinct locations. Let me tell you about them. One is in South Pasadena. That's where that old house is that the kids are out in front of. That's where we pull back in the beginning of the movie. The Halloween street, however, where the girls are babysitting, that's actually in my hometown of Hollywood, California. It's right off of Sunset Boulevard. And they were wonderful to us, absolutely wonderful. They didn't mind us shooting at all.
Our biggest problems in creating an autumn world in Southern California in the spring with palm trees was to shoot around the palm trees or to create shots that blocked out the palm trees in some way.
Unfortunately, especially in the beginning of the movie, you can see a few palm trees. That's the only thing that screwed it up. What the hell?
In the beginning of the movie, we got these big bags of leaves, you know, orange leaves, fall leaves, and we would have this sort of stupid fan next to the camera, and we would like throw the leaves and so that they would like blow in front of the camera.
I remember there maybe being 6 to 8 people on the crew. And it was time to throw the leaves on the grass. Everybody pitched in.
And when we finished that scene, you know what we did? We went and raked the leaves, picked them up, and put them back in the bags for the next time.
But amid the group's exuberance, there was also anxiety on the part of first-time film star Jamie Lee Curtis.
The first day we shot, I remember going home and thinking I was going to be fired. I just thought I sucked. And I remember being at home and my roommate said, "Jamie, the phone's for you, it's John Carpenter." And I thought, oh man, this is it.
Hello? Hello? Who is this?
And he called to say how happy he was with the day's work, and I just thought that was great. It's never happened to me again.
This was her first big break, and she wanted to be very good. So yeah, she and I had a great time together. We had a hoot because she's very funny, she's very charming, she's very lovable, and you know, we became very good friends after that.
I just was totally enamored by Jamie. I felt like Jamie was my little sister. She really needs a lot of love and a lot of confidence building. And I think that's what makes her so unique as a talent, is that the lack of confidence she makes up for sort of a bigger-than-life character.
You know, you could ask somebody. Well, I could. Sure you could. All you have to do is go up to somebody and say, "You want to go to the dance?" You could do that. I couldn't.
Inhabiting this sinister shape of Michael Myers was one of John Carpenter's friends and former USC schoolmates, future filmmaker Nick Castle.
When I found out that John was going to be shooting Halloween, pretty close to my house actually, I went down there and asked if I could stick around the set, because at that time I was trying to get my own pictures off the ground as a director. And he said, "Okay, fine, but as long as you're going to be here, why don't you do something?" And he said, "Go here, put this on, and you'll be the guy running around with, be the killer." And I said, "Fine. Do I get any money?" "Yes, $25 a day." And it was great.
He's just a real pal, and his father was a choreographer for Fred Astaire, and he just moved great. And I think John really wanted to play him as that, where he just looks, and his head turns, and he's enamored by this sister-like character that he sees in Laurie Strode. He makes the connection. He breaks out of the insane asylum and gets to his house and sees this young girl and makes this sort of subtle connection.
I wish I had you all alone, just the two of us.
I basically asked the actor question, what is my motivation? And he said, your motivation is to walk from this point to the end point and roll.
Do nothing, just walk. Don't act, just walk.
I think he really gave the movie something. I think there's little moments that he does in the movie that are really special that, you know, take it away from being just some sort of thug in a suit.
Come on out.
The only crazy thing he did was when he stabs the kid. And he looks at him like this, like he's looking at a butterfly collection. That's the only direction I think I gave him.
He was just, you know, a gentle friend of John's there. He didn't want to hurt anybody.
Nick had a wife and I believe 2 babies, and they came by every day at lunch, and, you know, here's this guy with this oversuit on, and, you know, the mask was just always lying next to him. He'd put it on and go do the work.
John sent me out to find the perfect mask, or to create the perfect mask for the movie, and it was simply to be a kind of a blank face.
We didn't have any money to make a mask. It was originally written the way you see it. In other words, it's a pale mask with human features, almost featureless. I don't know why I wrote that down, why Deborah and I decided on that. Maybe it was because of an old movie called Eyes Without a Face. It's a French film, Franjou made it, and this girl had a burned face, so she wore this face mask. It was real creepy because it was featureless and immobile except for her eyes. So Tommy Lee Wallace, the production designer, ran up to the mask shop on Hollywood Boulevard and bought a couple. One was a clown mask, and that's, you know, one way to go. And the other, he got this William Shatner Star Trek mask, Captain Kirk.
Because in mask form, the William Shatner mask was just a kind of a blank face. It didn't really look like anybody.
And he cut the eye holes out a little bit bigger so they weren't like this, they were rounder.
Tore off the eyebrows. I kind of poofed up the hair a little so it looked demented and strange. And I spray painted it whiter than it already was. Annie! Took off the sideburns.
That's the one. Ah, cheese. Oh, cheese.
Oh, it created a shiver right in the room, and we knew we had something special.
I guess I owe the success of Halloween to William Shatner. Well, sort of. The hilarious thing about the mask situation is that the mask of Captain Kirk, anyway, looked nothing like him. Nothing like him. I mean, it just looked like, I don't know what it looked like, but that was the secret, that we really didn't look like William Shatner at all.
Oh, terrific.
John was acutely aware of the importance of composition. You deliberately put a character on one side of the frame, leaving a lot of empty frame, which can either tell the audience something is going to happen there or potentially could happen.
Hello? Who's there? Oh, is this one of your cheap trips?
There's one where Nancy Loomis is in the kitchen talking on the phone.
Hello?
Hi, Annie.
Oh, hi, Paul.
Stuck, huh?
All right, cut it out. It can happen to anyone.
And the camera sort of pans with her. And it's as it passes by behind her in the doorway is the shape standing there. And camera gets off of it, and then when it comes back, he's not there.
Yeah, but I've seen you stuck in plenty of other positions.
My parents are gone.
Oh, that's fabulous. When did they leave?
About a half hour ago.
Oh, utterly fantastic.
the dog, killing the dog. You know, I'm a dog lover. I hated that. But I think what we had to do was to find a way to show that the shape was really evil and deadly.
Lindsay, Lester's barking again and getting on my nerves again. Oh, never mind. Guess he found a hot date.
In crafting the story of Halloween, John Carpenter cleverly balanced high tension with carefully chosen moments of comic relief. Most of them were courtesy of co-star P.J. Soles.
Hey, is Annie around?
No, I thought she'd be home by now. She went to pick up Paul.
Well, she's totally not here.
She probably stopped off someplace. Have her call me when she gets home, though. I have Lindsay here, and I want to know what time to put her to bed.
Okay. Later.
Have a good time.
We definitely will.
Bye.
You know, Jamie always told me she was jealous of my part because I got to do all the fun stuff. I had a lot of make-out scenes.
Yeah.
Can't help it, the phone keeps ringing.
Oh, and I can't keep you interested,
Just
huh?
answer the damn phone.
Well, I can't. What if it's the Wallaces? Get Annie in trouble, you know.
Just take it off the hook.
That bedroom scene, that was a good scene.
Oh, fantastic.
John did say, it would be nice in this scene if we could have a little nudity, and I don't know, however you want to do it. He was trying to be very gentle with it. But, you know, in the script it does say she slides the sheet down. Now, I happen to be, you know, naked under there, and the ghost, the guy comes back with the sheet over his head, and I'm thinking it's my boyfriend. How come I can't get him to you know, react to me or anything?
Well, did you get my beer? Cute, Bob, real cute.
I think the line was, okay, big guy, come over here, but instead I slid the sheet down and say,
See anything you like?
I just thought that was really funny, and John liked it too. So, and that's become a classic line. In fact, the first time that I had gone to see the movie in Hollywood, there was a guy behind me, right behind me, and I was sitting there watching, and I say, see anything you like?
Well, can't you answer me?
And the guy goes, you bet your sweet beep I do.
Are you weird?
And I just sank down in my chair. I was so embarrassed, and I thought, oh boy, I gotta wait till everybody clears out of here before I move, because I don't want him to know it was me.
Carpenter and Deborah Hill had filled their script with several set pieces of shocking horror. Now, with time running out, Carpenter had to capture that horror on film with little bloodshed and no special effects.
Usually at carnivals or fairs or, you know, any place, there's always the haunted house ride. Things jump out at you and these foolish things happen. And when I was a little guy, a little kid, I went to these things, and I remember what scared me about those rides. I tried to duplicate them in a cinematic way. The things that go bump and jump out and scare you.
We wanted it to not be gory, we wanted it to be scary, and there's a big difference between gore and scare.
John is, from childhood, from earliest days, one of his passions was scary movies. And when he got his turn, he drew from the lessons he had learned watching these movies, and one of the cardinal rules is don't show too much of the monster. One of the oldest tricks in the book is to understand that it's not what you see, it's what you don't see that gets you scared. It's about knowing something's in there, and when your character for some compelling reason, must go in there. It's about anticipation. Where's it going to happen?
John often likened it to the idea of a Jack-in-the-Box. When you're playing this tune, which is awfully friendly, but suddenly it goes, "Ah!"
As far as filming it and at the time it being scary, it just wasn't. We'd always end up laughing, and even my death scene where I'm getting strangled by the phone, I had to beg him to do it harder. I said, you know, don't kill me, but just do it a little harder because this, all you're doing is tickling my neck and I can't die this way.
Hello? Hello? All right, Annie. First I get your famous chewing, now I get your famous squealing. Annie, are you all right?
John was very, very acutely aware of as being how you build suspense. The great moment when Jamie Lee's running in the house. She runs upstairs and is hiding in a corner where she thinks she's safe, and it's sort of dark. And John said, how can we accomplish the idea that our eyes are sort of getting used to the dark, and we're starting to see the fact that Michael Myers is hiding there? And I said, oh, well, this would be fun. So we set it up with a small light on a dimmer. I gradually turned the light up so it began to just barely expose the film. And then you start to notice something.
She's back there, and there's no exposure on it. There's just black, and then slowly he just turns it up so you barely begin to see a little exposure on the face, and then he comes out.
As the end of Halloween's filming approached, spirits on the set stayed surprisingly high as cast and crew rallied each other to make it to the finish line.
John clearly knew what he wanted. There was no waffling of a sort of first-time movie director. There was just no time to even question it.
When you make a low-budget movie like this, it forces a director into committing and being creative, trying to be creative. How can I do this so the audience will watch it rather than being really bored with it? I think that's one of the strengths of Halloween, is the sense that this pace is different. It's not the cutty pace that you're used to. We didn't have enough time. And there's one shot where Jamie runs from one house up to another, screams at a neighbor.
Hello! Hello! Oh, oh! Hello, help me! Man, please help me! Please! Can you hear me? Oh, God! Oh, help me, please!
Runs all the way across the street, and we're panic-gliding with her right into the door as she bangs on it. And we worked our butts off to do that.
Tommy! Tommy, it's me! Who is it? Tommy, open up, it's me! Yeah, Tommy, please!
If you watch the picture, it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. The shots of the shape, they get narrower and narrower and narrower until the end of the movie where Jamie's in the closet. It's a really tight, close-up kind of movie.
You're in there with her, and this guy's coming after her, and you're going, oh my God, what's she gonna do? God, grab the hanger. I mean, yeah, you get frightened.
At the end, of course, Jamie Lee is always dropping the stupid knife.
He wanted her to be a very vulnerable little girl so that you, as an audience, cared about her.
Come here. Now just listen to me. I want you to go down the stairs and out the front door. And I want you to go down the street to the Mackenzie's house. I want you to tell them to call the police and tell them to send them over here.
During the shoot, John Carpenter was also busy working on another ingredient, the music score, which the keyboard-playing director composed himself.
I had 3 days to do the score, and my father bought me a pair of bongos, believe it or not, when I was a teenager, which I never particularly learned how to play, but he taught me 5/4 time on them. 5/4 time, it became the Halloween. That's all that is. Da 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 da. It worked. So I just did it on the piano, octaves, and put some synth strings and so forth on it.
Dun, 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 dun. And right off the bat, you are out of balance. It's almost as if your whole mind is being short-circuited and played with because you're getting this fast, crazy, erratic music. With the music, it went to an incredibly other dimension. I mean, it was another movie completely. It was so effective. Now you say, how long did it take? Well, how long could it take? John had 4 weeks to prepare the film. He had 4 weeks to shoot it and 4 weeks to finish it. So he probably did it while he was shaving.
Well, it didn't work without the music. And interestingly enough, I showed it to an executive from 20th, but I didn't have the music on it. And she said, this is not frightening. There's nothing scary about this movie.
Fate caught up with several lives here. No matter what course of action Collins took, he was destined to his own fate.
Did not have music. So that taught me a valuable lesson. It wasn't effective because it was all silent.
Fate caught up with several lives here. No matter what course of action Collins took, he was destined to his own fate.
People would scream when Michael is unmasked in the hallway there, Jamie unmasked him. Well, what you're seeing is nothing. It's just a guy under there. But you're so built up to it, people would scream at it.
John and Deborah wanted a certain look for the person that was going to eventually be Michael Myers when the mask came off. They didn't want someone really handsome like me. So they said they wanted someone that looked more angelic, kind of against type. But I'll let the audience decide if they actually made a good casting decision there. I think I would have been much better, frankly.
The movie's final minutes were also enhanced by the sensitive contribution of co-star Donald Pleasence.
Donald taught me a lot about acting. There's a scene in Halloween after Michael Myers has been shot off this balcony. Donald's character sees that the body's gone. He said, I can play this two ways. I can play this, oh my God, or I can play this, I knew this would happen. I said, I didn't know what to say, so I said, can you do it both ways for me? And he did, and we used, I knew this would happen. That was the one. That was the one that was chilling.
The final montage of the movie was actually made in the editing room. I don't think that it was certainly not in the script. And all these like shots of places where he had been or could have been.
The ending means he's not only gone, he's everywhere. This guy is a human, but he's not. He's more than that. He's not exactly supernatural, but maybe he is. Who knows how he got that way? It makes the ending more surprising if you don't say he's been, cursed by some. You don't give much of an explanation. So your imagination works much more, it's much more terrifying.
It was very funny because people who saw the picture thought we had set it up for a sequel. And, that was the furthest thing from our minds.
As Carpenter put his finishing touches on Halloween, distributor Irwin Yablans was fighting a different battle. With help from his longtime business partner, a former entertainment lawyer turned film distributor named Joe Wolfe. Together, Wolfe and Yablans struggled to get their low-budget film into theaters, either by releasing it themselves or, best of all, by convincing a major studio to provide distribution.
I had invited Warner Brothers, Columbia, Paramount, all of the majors to come to the screening, none of whom came in those days. This before they even paid attention to these kind of pictures. So I sat down with Joe and I said, we're going to distribute this picture ourselves. I need to get some prints.
Irwin said to me, I need a lot of prints. I said, well, how am I going to get them? I said, well, I'll call MGM and see if they'll give them to me. Just so happens that I had done a favor for MGM, and when I walked in and ordered 400 prints, they said yes.
The distribution was not on a national level, it was just town by town. Irwin Yablans, he was really very good at that, selling it theater by theater, town by town, city by city.
We had been asked to go to USC, and John, who being an alumnus of the school, we ran the film and then got up and were being grilled by the film students.
John took the film back to his class at SC, his people, and they said, why are you making that piece of junk?
One of the students raised a hand and got up and he said, I have to ask you people, why in the world, if you're going to make a movie, why in the world would you want to make this kind of movie? I mean, a disgusting horror film. Why would you want to make this? And we all kind of looked at each other and said, well, what we really tried to do was to take, a genre that hadn't been done for a while, but to do something sort of fresh with it, to do something stylish. And Deborah said, yeah, and we can always hope that someday it would become kind of a classic film. And the guy said, why, you people, you think this film is ever going to become a classic? Why, how pretentious of you. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, you people, and he left.
First time I saw it was in a class at UCLA. I would say 33% of people walked out. And, I looked over at my wife and said, well, but 33% of the people aren't going to like a horror picture.
With no movie stars and no studio backing, the future of Halloween seemed frightening indeed. But what happened next was more surprising and shocking than anything John Carpenter had imagined.
Halloween night. A small American town, 15 years ago. Michael? Halloween.
In October of 1978, after 20 days of filming and a total cost of just $320,000, Halloween opened in limited release.
The very first engagement of the picture in a paying situation was in Kansas City, in 4 theaters. And I remember sitting by the phone that night waiting for the receipts. And I got the figures, $200 and $300, that were not impressive, but they were not disastrous.
I'm never smiling again.
It was released in October, November of '78, and it wasn't doing great. And then Deborah called and said, looks like we bombed.
Don't underestimate it.
The next day, I got a phone call. They were double. The next day, they were triple. By the weekend, they were 10 times. This taught me a great deal about the power of word of mouth, because we had very little money to spend on advertising, and nobody knew who this picture was.
A few people got it. A few people knew that it was special, it was well made, it was a good piece of cinema, as well as a good popcorn movie. Awful lot of other people just shrugged it off or didn't like it at all.
It was something that built over, 3 or 4 months. And even then, it wasn't like I walked down the street and people were going, "Hey, Laurie Strode, all right."
The amazing thing is how this movie built. Irwin Yablans, who released the picture through Compass International, truly had a plan. The plan was to take it to the Chicago Film Festival. It wasn't until the picture opened at the Chicago Film Festival that we realized we had a critical and commercial success in our hand. The picture was reviewed wonderfully, and the audiences were just lined up around the block.
Pictures, normally they open up and they go down. The people who go and see them. This picture was amazing. It kept on going up and up and up. And it played Philadelphia, it played Boston, it played New York, and basically weeks it stayed.
People had told 2 other people, 4 other people, 5 other. They told 10 other people. It was almost like the game of telephone.
Oh, that's fabulous.
The reviews were good, but over a period of 8 weeks, this film just killed them. We couldn't believe it.
I'll kill you if this is a joke.
I used to come up to sit down with Irwin and we'd say, well, what do we do now?
Everybody's coming up saying, "Ooh, what are you talking about?" Well, it's a big hit. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. I had no idea.
Suddenly, the movie no studio had wanted was a box office blockbuster. Halloween surpassed everyone's expectations to become the most profitable independently released film to date, grossing over $70 million worldwide in its original release.
It was, the new indie sensation that everyone had to see. What set Halloween apart from other, horror films of that time, I think, was just the skill that John Carpenter brought to the material. Subjective shots from the killer's point of view. It really hadn't been done that much before. He came up with a very memorable score, that had you on edge right from the beginning. He had good actors, and the victims were also sympathetic. So many of the slasher films that came out after Halloween, these characters are just set up to die, but you cared about the characters in Halloween.
First time I saw it in a movie theater was amazing, because they suddenly started picking up on all the characters, and particularly, screaming to Laurie Strode, "Don't go there, don't go in the house, don't cross the street." I mean, it was very much, an audience participation, and particularly when they realized that the character PJ played had this kind of, the way she talked, where she said "totally" all the time.
Put me down! This is totally silly!
So when she would finish a sentence, the whole audience would scream out, "Totally!"
I totally promise. I totally don't believe you.
So it was like really, really fun. And then, I just kept going the whole opening weekend. I went multiple times to different theaters, and by the end of the weekend, it was like Rocky Horror Show.
Oh, God, help me!
People were screaming and yelling lines back and interactive. It was really great. It was really great.
With her very first movie role, Jamie Lee Curtis had established herself as a star to watch.
It gave me a movie career. I tried to point out the irony that in those exploitation movies, I was intelligent, forthright, fought back against adversity.
And she got to do all this great stuff. She got to be frightened and scream. She got to be caretaking to the kids. She got to fight the monster. I mean, she did all kinds of great stuff. And that's a dream part.
Halloween also launched the careers of its talented makers behind the camera.
Most of the people, you know, in Halloween, people have become major contributors to the film industry from this film.
Everybody has been successful. Dean Cundy became one of the top cinematographers in town. Deborah Hill became an ace producer. Nick Castle became a director. You know, lots of times you hear about the curse of something. This is one movie where I can really I can't think of anybody who was cursed. Everybody benefited, everybody has been successful. It's been only a positive story.
By virtue of the contract that I had as the writer-director, I had a net participation profit deal, and I got the biggest check I had ever seen in my life from Halloween. It was stunning. I couldn't believe it.
The film's simple plot also became fodder for serious analysis by many of the nation's top movie critics. Some saw a conservative agenda in a story that hinged on the murder of sexually active women. But its director disagreed.
The teenagers that were victims are sexually active. But that misses just the essential point of the film. The movie's about the revenge of the repressed. And Jamie Lee has a connection with the killer because she's repressed too.
It's tragic you never go out. You must have a small fortune stashed from babysitting so much.
Guys think I'm too smart.
To me, these kids are just engaged in normal teenage behavior. They get killed because they're not paying attention. They're involved with their boyfriends and they don't think anything's going on. There's no Christian right morality. No.
And psychiatrists and academics tend to read a little too much into Halloween. You know, Carpenter just wanted to make a scary movie.
I asked my son, he was 17, Tom, why do you go and pay money and go and see these scary movies? He said, Dad, I take a girl to the movies. After 5 minutes, either she's grabbing me or I'm grabbing her. And this is so. Next day, he will take a new girl.
Jerk. God, I've got a shirt on. That's all you ever think about.
Soon after Halloween's success, John Carpenter's creation received the ultimate Hollywood compliment of imitation. Now, the same studios that had turned the movie down began making a series of blood-stained imitators.
You know, the first of the horror movies. You know, everything came after that. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, which I was involved in.
Created a whole, industry of slasher films. From Friday the 13th, and any holiday wasn't safe anymore. You had New Year's Evil, Silent Night, Deadly Night, April Fool's Day. It should also add that a lot of mainstream movies, I think, imitated the slasher tropes, films like Fatal Attraction and Sleeping with the Enemy, films like that, where they took, sure, they dressed it up with big stars and big production values, but those are really slasher films under the surface. And again, they also owe a debt to Halloween.
As other movie monsters got into the act, Michael Myers himself returned to screens.
Dino De Laurentiis with Universal came, they wanted to do a sequel. A sequel? I thought, my God, that's not television, never heard of a sequel before. They said, no, we want to do sequel, and I said, well, I don't know. They said, don't worry, we'll give you a profit in advance. I said, okay.
1981 saw the release of Halloween 2, produced by Deborah Hill and co-written by John Carpenter.
John Carpenter and I agreed to write Halloween 2 and produce it, and we wanted it to be a continuation of the night. And it was very difficult for that movie to be fully realized because not until after we were in the midst of shooting it, we realized we had the lead character of Laurie Strode comatose in a bed. She was not proactive, and it really didn't work, in my opinion.
I will say that what got me through writing that script was Budweiser, 6-pack of beer a night, sitting in front of the typewriter saying, what in the hell can I put down? I have no idea. We're remaking the same film. only not as good.
The film was a box office hit, and it paved the way for a seemingly unstoppable series of sequels.
I've only seen one or two of them. Halloween 2 was okay. Halloween 3 was a horror. It was just a terrible movie.
Halloween 3, when approached to do a sequel, John and I decided we wanted to do something completely different. We loved this guy, Nigel Neal, who'd written the Cratermass movies, and so we wanted to work with him. And essentially, we found out that the audiences really wanted to see Michael Myers.
Dino De Laurentiis with Universal, they don't want Michael Myers. Let's make a horror story, but without Michael Myers.
I don't like that story.
I was not in favor of this, but I was like outvoted. We tried it, it failed. So number 4, I get them all out, and I did number 4. Going back to the basic elements of 1, we always go back to the basics, and it works.
Ultimately, John and I didn't want to make any more sequels, and so Mustafa Akkad started making them. Mustafa, he's like Mr. Halloween.
I'm the godfather of the Halloween. I preserve its continuity. I preserve its element. I will keep doing it, and I'll stop at 22. That's what Donald Pleasance said. One of the press were asking him, "Come on, Donald, you're going to keep doing these Halloweens, all this?" He said, "No way, no way. I'll stop at 22." So I like to follow his advice.
Mustafa Akkad has kept the franchise alive because he believes in it. Years later, Miramax bought the rights to the Halloween franchise, and they had the idea of, and Jamie actually had the idea of reuniting us again and met with them. Everybody wanted to do it except me. God bless all of you here, but no thanks.
The one that is closest to Halloween 1 is H2O. I think that the filmmakers, and certainly Jamie, tried to stylistically keep it as close to the original as possible. And for that, I'm extremely grateful.
Thanks. I have lots of fight with scriptwriters all along this series, whereby I don't want him to be killed. Okay, he can be shot, he can be wounded, but not have him in a dynamite blow up or chop his head or do, because it means, you know, he's dead. How can we get him back?
Actually, I'm still involved in the Halloweens. Make another one sequel, I get the benefit of being paid some money, which is wonderful because I'm a capitalist and enjoy that.
But it's Halloween 1 that brings them all in. And when people go and buy, and they buy Halloween 1.
NBC wanted to buy Halloween and put it on TV, but it wasn't long enough. They had a running time of, I forget what it is now, and we were 2 minutes under or something, so I had to shoot additional footage. Carpet footage, I call it.
Michael Myers is the most dangerous patient I have ever observed.
Doctor, there is no diagnostic evidence to support that statement.
He's covering up. This catatonia is a conscious act. There's an instinctive force within him. He's waiting.
For what?
I don't know.
But we still made a lot of money from it. Yeah, so I hoed out. Hoed right out.
Hi. Hurry up. What's wrong? Shut the door. Some guy is following me.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. I think it's that guy that passed us in the street in that station wagon. I couldn't see him very well, but I think it's Steve Todd. His brother has a station wagon.
No, he was parked outside the school today. Right outside the window, he was staring at me.
Steve Todd was staring at you?
Somebody was. A while ago, he was in my backyard.
Well, or maybe he just wants a date.
Oh, shut up!
Well, someone could want a date.
I think they should have left it the way it was, but NBC required these changes, and they were made.
What's amazing to me as a writer of it and producer of it is that 20-some years after we made the picture, there's still a huge fan base out there.
People adore it, you know, it's like Rocky Horror Picture Show, it's like any of the movies where people can dress up as the characters or get that mask.
All right.
Yeah, it did inspire merchandise and merchandising over the years. You know, there's been Halloween masks, posters, and dolls.
I have all the little action figures at home. I am actually an action figure. That's kind of exciting. There's Luke Skywalker, there's, you know, then me, you know? So that's a lot of fun.
Goddamn kids. They'd do anything for Halloween.
I suppose there's one thing about Halloween that I hold very dear and precious, and that is that much like the killer himself, Halloween seems to never die. People constantly coming up and say they saw the film and they remember when they saw it, when they were kids, or they've seen it on TV. And that is really neat.
Halloween would go on to make another fortune in its many incarnations on home video and DVD.
And it's still selling tremendous amount of video cassettes, and it's going to be on television every year. It's fantastic, you know, it's one of those things that may happen once in a lifetime.
As for its creator, John Carpenter would go on to other triumphs that established him as one of the top horror and suspense directors of his generation.
Halloween got me branded as a horror director, and they had set me down a career making fantasy and science fiction and horror, but hey, I got to become John Carpenter. How cool is that?
Despite John Carpenter's other successes, many still consider Halloween his ultimate accomplishment, and it endures today as a chilling horror classic and a still inspiring example of filmmaking ambition and imagination.
Man wouldn't do that. This isn't a man.
And it's still a scary movie because they allow you to do all the thinking. You don't need all that blood and guts and gore because you know what's going to happen. Create that atmosphere and you got an audience.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Fear is an interesting thing. We all are afraid of the same things.
Lori, the boogeyman's outside, look!
That's what makes these movies so universal. That makes them play in every country.
Help! Oh, God, help me, please!
We're all afraid of death, loss of identity, loss of a loved one, disfigurement, all the horrors of humanity. We all have them. We can all relate.
If it scares you and you can sit on the couch and get a little closer to your girlfriend and put your arm around her and make her feel a little better, you know, and comfort her while she's squealing in the chair there, then that's a good movie to see.
Have a good time.
We definitely will.
And I advise some of these, from the married, take a husband and put a tape of Halloween and watch it. I think it will bring out some emotions or some intimacy.
Oh, fantastic.
I love Michael Myers. To me, everybody hates him, but I am going to keep him alive as long as I can.
Are you weird?
It definitely stands the test of time. It hasn't dated, unlike a lot of other films, you know, from the 70s and older films. It's a real primal experience. It's, you know, lean, mean, fighting machine. Like Hitchcock, Carpenter was really able to mine those feelings that nobody's safe no matter where you are. You know, you leave the big city and you go out into the suburbs, but there's evil lurking out there too.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
He's everywhere. Evil still lives. He will always live. He's in the shadows. He may be in your house. He may be in mine.
Oh, no.
Cute, Bob, real cute.
Come on now.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.